Today I have for you 25 Unreal Engine tips that will streamline your workflow, save you time, and just make your life easier when working on your projects. If you don't learn at least 5 new things today, you probably don't even need this channel. Let's go. The ability to select objects, so I'm going to click here and press shift to select all these objects on the balcony and isolate these objects is extremely helpful because I want to select these objects here too and put them in their own folder. So to isolate objects or unisolate objects in Unreal Engine, there is no such default shortcut for this, but if you right click on any object or objects you want to isolate and go to visibility, we have show only selected, hide selected, and show all actors. And these are custom shortcuts I changed. And to set these shortcuts, you go to edit, you go to editor preferences, and you search for the shortcut you want to set. So if we want to set show only selected to H, then in the editor preferences we can type show only selected, and this will show us under general keyboard shortcuts in the level editor show only selected. So you can set this to H, then show all actors. You can set this to Ctrl H and hide selected. You can set this to Shift H. And I like the combination of these shortcuts. So once you select your objects like this, you can isolate your selection, and then we can press Alt 3 on the keyboard to see things in the unlit mode. You can press Ctrl and Alt to have the marquee selection tool to be able to select multiple objects, and instead of selecting them manually like this, all you need to do is to press Ctrl and Alt and do your selection like so, and that will select multiple objects for you. Once you select the multiple objects you want to select, you can go to your world outliner, right click and click on move to, click on create new folder, and this will move your selection to a new folder, and then you can press F2 to rename the folder to a descriptive name, for example dining table and chairs. So anything that will help you identify your folder. And once you have your objects within a folder, you can right click and you can go to select immediate children, and this will do the selection for you instead of selecting things manually. So that's the beauty of organizing our assets into folders in the Word Outliner. Let's say you have a scenario where you want to edit one of your static meshes. So in this scenario, I have this wall and this door, and I don't want to go back to my 3D tool of choice to edit the wall. I simply want to edit the wall here, where I'm going to match its height to the door. So what you can do is pressing Shift 5 to switch to the modeling mode, then go to mesh and you can choose something like triangle edit. This can work. Select this triangle and this triangle, so hold shift and click to select multiple triangles, and now you can move this on the Z axis. So if you want to move it exactly to this position, then click on the axis again, move it, and press on Ctrl to snap to a surface or any point you like. So if you snap it here, then you will snap to exactly this height. So click on accept once you're happy and you should be good. Here I have another scenario where we need to adjust the height, and also there is something wrong here. I checked in the 3D program and it seems that the edge here is not very good. So we need to move the edge to this part. So instead of going back to 3D Max and fix it, what I can do is also fixing this in Unreal Engine. So I can click on Mesh, Triangle Edit, click on this edge, click on the Y-axis, hold Ctrl and snap it to this wall or to this vertex, anything that works for you, and I can click on accept. Now before I do that, I'm going to select these two faces. I will hold on the Z-axis here and I will hold Ctrl to snap, and now I'm happy. I fixed this without doing that in 3D Max, export, re-import, and all that stuff. So easy peasy. One function I really like, it's called paste here. For example, I have this sink with the faucet. I can press Ctrl C to copy this, and then I can go where I want to paste this, and I can simply right click and click on edit and paste here. And this is also here a custom shortcut that I made is Shift V. So basically I would click somewhere and press Shift V to paste here. And this works on so many other elements. For example, if you want to copy a light from here, I would press Ctrl C, and then let's say I want to paste this light here, then I would click here and I press Shift V, my shortcut, to paste the light here. And as you can see, this is really good to place items really fast. And every time I paste here, I just move it down just a little so the light won't overlap with the mesh. So paste here is amazing. One other tip I have, can we rotate or move this object without clicking and moving the arrows or clicking and dragging the values here? Yes, we can. So first I'm going to press E to switch to rotation. Then if you hold Ctrl and left mouse click together on the mouse, so hold both, you can rotate an object on the Z axis. Well, what happens if you click just the left mouse button? Then we will move the object or rotate it on the X axis. And if you hold Ctrl and the right mouse button, then that will be on the Y axis. And the same for moving an object. So if I press W to select the translate tool, now hold Ctrl and press the left mouse button, this will move on the X axis, right mouse button on the Y axis, and both buttons we can move it on the Z axis. And this is handy in many scenarios where you want to hold Ctrl and the mouse without clicking here, maybe because you're lazy or maybe you really cannot select the translate gizmo here. My next tip is to orbit around selection. By default, when you orbit, to hold Alt and left mouse button, you will orbit around the center of the screen in general, but if you have a selected object, we can have the ability to orbit around that selected object. To demonstrate, here I have this selected object. If I am in the center of my view, you will orbit normally, but if this object on the side of the screen, you can still orbit around the selected object. So again, this will orbit around the center of screen, which is fine, but for me it feels kind of weird. I like to orbit around selected object. So you go to Edit, Preferences, and you can search for Orbit, and you will find the option Orbit Camera Around Selection. Enable this, and now if you hold Alt and left mouse button, you will orbit around the selected object. So if you put it in the corner and you will orbit around this selected object. If you disable this and try to orbit again, you will see what I mean. So I hope you like this. Let's move on to the next one. My next tip is similar to Alt Tab. So in Windows, when you press Alt Tab, you can switch between open projects, but in Unreal Engine, if you hold Ctrl and Tab, you can switch between open assets. So here I have the map. This asset, if I hold Ctrl Tab, I can switch to the blueprint, I can switch to my enumeration, and I can switch back to my map to continue working on my project, which is very handy shortcut. Ctrl and Tab to switch between active files. Very nice. If you want to switch between perspective and orthographic views without using these shortcuts because they are kind of hard to memorize, Alt-J for the tab, Alt-key or K for the left, Alt-G for the perspective, so Alt-J for the tab and Alt-key for left and so on, you can hold Ctrl and middle mouse button and that will bring a line that I hope you can see, and if I move this line to the tab, we will switch to the top view. If I move it to the left or to the right, we will switch between back and front view. And if I move it to this corner or this corner from my orthographic view, so this corner or this corner, we will switch back to perspective. And here's a tip: when we switch between your perspective and orthographic views, select any object, switch to the view you want to switch to, for example the top view, then press on F and that will focus your selection. So now if we move to this corner or this corner, we can switch between the left and the right views. And again to this corner or this corner to switch to the perspective view. And when we switch to the top view or any orthographic view and zoom on specific object, if you hold the middle mouse button, you can see in units that you can measure. So for example here, the distance from this point to this point is 180 units. The distance from this point to this point is 1082 units or wherever, and so on. So if you want to measure things, you can switch to the orthographic view and then hold the middle mouse button to have this line that can help you measure assets in your project. In an orthographic view, when you have objects selected and you hold Ctrl, you will move these objects around. If you want to add to your selection, you need to press on Shift, and now we can add to this selection. The only way we can remove selected items is by holding Ctrl and clicking on these items. If you deselect everything and hold Ctrl and Shift, you can move the orthographic view left, right, up and down, which is very useful since we cannot hold the middle mouse button and move around to pan our view. So hold Ctrl, Shift and left click to move around. However, if you have objects selected and you hold Ctrl and Shift, you will move these objects with your view. And this can be also handy for object or light placement if you are placing things from an orthographic view. So for example, here we have a light. You can hold Alt and move this light to place it from this view. And if you're zoomed in, for example, if it's outside the view, the other light, you can create a duplicate by holding Alt. Then you can press Ctrl and Shift to move the light and your camera and place the light where it should be. Let's say you want to keep your project organized and you organized part of the project. So here in the past, I've moved all the actors here to one folder called Bedroom Backyard. And these here are new actors. For example, this is in a folder called New Mesh. This here is not even in a folder, and so on. One of the easiest way to move all these objects to the folder where you have your objects, this folder here, you can right click on this folder in the Word Opener, make it current folder. So now it will be green. Now you can select the actors that you want to move, then press Ctrl X to cut and Ctrl V to paste again. And when you paste these actors, they will be placed directly inside the current folder. So this is one way I move actors between folders real quick without going to the move to and then try to find the folder I want to move here or type its name. So Ctrl X to cut and Ctrl V to paste in the current folder. And when you're done, you can right click and clear current folder. And if I want to double check that my folder here contains everything in the room, I can hide the folder and then it will keep me only with the assets that are not still organized. So I can select these assets, press Ctrl X and Ctrl V again, and they will all be placed within my current folder. So this is one really good method to keep everything where it should be in their folders, and it's very fast. If you want the ability to edit all the lights in your project, whether together or an individual level, without exploring the outliner. So the outliner here contains all sorts of actors, the static meshes, the blueprints, the lights, and so on. We have something called the light mixer. So if you go to Window, you can find the light mixer here, click on it. This will add a new panel for us. It might be floating, so you can click and drag and add that here. Here you will see the same structure you have in your Word outliner, but inside these folders, you will find only the lights. So this have multiple features. First, we can select the lights we want to select, like so. We can hide them or delete them or do whatever we want. You can change their settings. So right now, these lights have 0.1, 0.1, and then 0.2. I can set all of them to be 1 or all of them to be 0.1 without going to the details panel and changing their values individually. This here allows us to edit point lights and spotlights together. If we want to see the details, the intensity, we want to select only the spotlights, and now we can see that, okay, we can edit their intensity. But the moment you add a spotlight and a point light or other type of light, you cannot edit them. So this allows you to edit multiple types of lights together, change their color, change their attenuation radius, and so on. Another benefit for the light mixer, it also allows you to see or to mix lights from its name, light mixer. For example, if I want to see just the sunlight, I can go to my sun and sky and I can click on this icon. And this will hide all the other lights and will show me only the sun and sky. And if I want to see the effect that I have in the living room, the sun, sky, and the living room only, I can click here and this will show me the lights of the living room. So another example of this, here in my project, I have two types of lights, one from my blueprint and one from the additional lights. I can isolate these lights to see their effect, or I can see only my blueprint lights. And for these lights, I can select them and I can change their intensity together. I can change their color and so on. In the light mixer, you can expand your view like this. You can right click here and you can add even more settings about your lights. So all these settings here are regarding our lights. So let's say temperature, I can click here and now I can see the temperature of all the lights. For these two lights, the temperature is disabled because we also need to enable the temperature. So right click, you can either find it from here or you can search here, use temperature. So use temperature, add this, and now you can enable them and you can change their temperature. And let's say you can add their value. All right, so that's for the light mixer. I got a question about light channels, so let's add light real quick. And in the details panel here, if you search for channel 0 enabled by default, so all our objects in the world also have the value of 0 enabled on them by default. So if I click on the sofa, you will see it receives light from channel 0. So if I click on this light and I disable channel 0, you will see that the light is not affecting our world anymore. But if I select any object, so I'm going to click, shift, click, and I will enable light 1 here, and I will go to my light and I enable channel 1 as well, you will see the sofa only is being affected. So if you select the light and let's reduce the intensity from 8 to something like 0.5, you will see you can add subtle lighting effects on very specific objects if you want to, using the light channels. Now this is before and this is with the light, so that's nice. If you want to rotate your objects so they look more random, slightly more realistic without clicking on the object, then pressing on E and rotating from here, you can select the object you want to rotate, then hold Ctrl while you are in the orthographic view, then right click. So hold Ctrl and right click and that will allow you to rotate your objects like this. So you can select the objects you want to rotate, hold Ctrl and right click and move your mouse slightly to add some randomization to your rotations. If you want to move these actors, you can hold Ctrl and left mouse button without clicking on the gizmo. So this can be fast sometimes. If you do this, it's just faster without clicking on the gizmo. But you must have the select and translate tool selected. If you have nothing selected and hold Ctrl and click, this will do nothing, but you can still rotate your objects if you hold Ctrl and right click. But Ctrl and left click, it will not work if you have this select objects enabled, not the select and translate. Replace selected actors with. This is extremely useful if you have an actor, like this actor, that you want to replace these actors with this actor. So all you need to do is to click the actors you want to replace, hold Ctrl to select multiple actors. Then if you have this actor selected in your content drawer, or if you recently placed this actor, if you right click and go to replace selected actors with, you're going to find selection and you can see the actor you have. So in this case, the static mesh or recently placed. So I can click here and this will replace the meshes for me with the new static mesh. I use this a lot when I'm replacing or experimenting with some static meshes. But of course, as you noticed, this can also be used on other types of actors like lights and primitives. For example, in the terms of lights, this is extremely handy if you want to place lights quickly. Let's say in this scenario, I have these spotlights from this one to this one. So I select all these lights, then I create another duplicate of these lights on the Z axis and I move them slightly below like this. Then I would right click, go to replace selected actors with and click on my spotlight here. Click on the spotlight and there we go. Now I can select the spotlight and move it below. And if you want for the gizmo to be on this light, for example, not on this light, or let's say you are doing this and you don't want to search where is the gizmo, you can hold Ctrl to deselect the light and hold Ctrl again to select that light and you will see that the gizmo moved to the last selected object. This is extremely useful as well. So I'm going now to select these like so and move them below like so. Now, If I want to copy the same settings from this light to these lights in terms of the intensity and the temperature, I would hold Shift, right click to select the light, then select these lights and hold Shift and left click to paste the intensity. Let's say the temperature, right click, hold Shift, right click, click on the temperature and select the lights here. Click on one, hold Shift, click to select all of them and use temperature, hold Shift and click with the left mouse button on the rest of the lights here. So for these chairs, I want to bring them back to the old chair I had. All I need to do is to select the chair, select these guys, hold Control, replace selected with, select my static mesh, and now we're good. In this tip, I want to share with you a couple of selection tips. So there are scenarios where you want to select all actors of similar type in your project. In this scenario, if you want to select all the spotlights in your project to set their value to something, I can select a spotlight, then I would press on Ctrl Shift A. And if you go to select, you will see here, select all spotlights. And based on your selection, this will change. So Ctrl Shift A is the shortcut for this. I can isolate my selection to confirm, and now I have all my spotlights. And now if I want to select these spotlights, I press Ctrl and Alt to have a marquee selection in my viewport, and I can set their settings or temperature or whatever. This also works on other types of assets like blueprints or static meshes. There are scenarios where I have my selection like this, and I have static meshes and spotlights, and let's say I have many more of these static meshes, then I press Ctrl Shift A to select all static meshes. And there are also scenarios where you want to select all the static meshes in your project. So you can select one static mesh, and here you go to select to just double check. As you can see, this changed now from spotlights to static meshes because we have a static mesh selected. So Ctrl Shift A will select all your static meshes. Now, let's say I want to select actors that are similar to this sunbed. So if I select one actor and I want to select similar actors, I would press Shift E, and that will select all similar actors to this actor here. So earlier, if I want to select all chairs that are similar to this, Shift E, and that will select the chairs that are similar to this. There is also very useful shortcut that I use a lot. It's called select with the same material. So select all with the same material. Sometimes I would select a wall object or any object, and then I press on select all with the same material, then isolate my selection to double check, and then I can replace that material with other materials. So that's very handy. And I noticed that I don't have a shortcut here on select all the same materials. So you would go to the editor preferences, and here you can search for select all with the same material, and usually I use Alt M for this. So now if I want to select all chairs that have the same materials or all actors that have the same materials as these two, I press Alt M, and that will select the chairs and the table because the table and the chairs here have the same walnut veneer white material. If you are duplicating an actor and you want to move the camera with the actor, you can click on the actor you are duplicating. So now I'm holding Alt and dragging the mouse on the X axis. If I want to move my camera, I press also Shift, and that will move my camera as well. And this is extremely useful when you want to move the camera with the actor without going to a place where you want to go like this and then bringing the actor like so. It's just too much work. So when you are in a situation like this, click and hold Shift, and that will always move the camera with the actor that you are duplicating or simply moving around. So this is very handy if you are zoomed in and you want to move this to a place like so, and you hold Shift and you simply move it like this. So now you know. There are scenarios where you want to have a smaller camera preview. So right now, this is the default camera preview I have. And let's say this is way too big and I want for this to be smaller. And this can be even more problematic when I have multiple cameras selected. So let's say I want to see all my views at once. I need to make this view smaller. So if you go to Edit, go to Editor Preferences. Let's make this big. Here in the search panel, if you search for camera preview, so I type camera PR, this will find this for us. Here, the camera preview size. Under level editor, viewports, look and feel. I highly recommend exploring the look and feel tab. There are so many things you can customize. Let's put this on the side a little, and the default value is 5. So if I set this to a value of 2, for example, this will make it smaller. If I set it to 1, this will make it even more small. If I set it to 5, this will be the default value. So I'm going to go with 3, I think, or 2.5. This is nice. Now you know. Another really cool settings that we can check out in the look and feel. So if you go to the editor preferences, level editor, viewports, we have look and feel. And I highly recommend exploring all the editor preferences. You will find so many cool options you can change. The measuring tool units, you can switch this from centimeters to meters or even kilometers. So now when we have a big project and you want to measure from here to here, these numbers can be a little bit tricky. So here we have 25,270 centimeters. But if you want something easier to read, then you can switch it to kilometers. So now we have quarter of a kilometer or simply meters, and we're gonna have 250 meters. So let's say here we have 17 meters. You get the idea. So I think for me, from now on, I'm gonna keep this at meters. Some other nice setting is the arc ball rotation. If you enable this and try to rotate an object, so here without it, if you put your mouse here, you will not be able to select anything in the middle of this area here. So unless you go like really near, then you can see the y-axis is enabled, the x-axis is enabled, one axis at the same time, not both. But if you want for more organic rotation, let's say you are working with organic objects, then this can be very handy. So enable arc ball rotation, click on this. Now we can rotate this an arc ball way. So in all directions. Of course, it's bad for such an asset, but for other type of assets, like the rock here, so I'm going to switch to my foliage mode. I'm going to select this rock and I'm going to rotate this with multiple axes at the same time for more organic feel. And if I want the y-axis alone, I can do that. The x-axis, z-axis, I can do that. And if I want all at once, we can also do that. For me personally, I like to keep this disabled, but for you, maybe you find this useful, maybe you find some other settings useful. Let me know in the comments. Something that's very important for me is the use of favorites and the use of folder colors. So let's say here in this project I have many folders and I want for a specific folder to be easy to locate. You can add that folder to favorites. Let's say VRD dev. I would click on this folder, right click and click on add to favorites, and now that folder is here. So now every time I click on Control Space, I will see my favorite folder here. So if I am in another folder, I click here and that will locate that folder for me. And I can do this for any other folder. Another thing that's very important is color coding our folders. So here we have set color, and in Unreal Engine 5.6 you can set from saved colors or you can set a new color from here. You can increase the value or decrease it between black and colored. Once you're happy, click on OK, and now you can see that your folder is colored. And this will make it really easy to find the folder you want to find based on the color code. Sometimes I want to organize a specific folder or delete it. I would set the color of that folder to something like red. And this will indicate for me, hey, maybe this folder don't use assets from here, or it needs work or whatever. So you can use these set colors based on how you want to work with the engine or you communicate with your team. In the same favorites logic, when you click on any actor, here we have toggle favorites. So right now, this is my details panel without favorites, but when we toggle the favorites, on the top we're going to have favorites. And here we're going to have settings and values that are important for us. For example, every time we add a new post-process volume, we want to scroll all the way down to post-process volume settings and then enable infinite extent and bound. So this post-process volume affects our world. All these settings that are important for you, you can right-click and you can add them to favorites. There are scenarios where you want to get really close to an object to see some details, but you will notice that the view is going to start to clip, which is a default behavior. So let's say I don't want this, I want to be able to see the tire when I get close to it. Well, you can go here to enter console command and you can search for set near clip plane. So the full command for this is r.set near clip plane, and you can set this to a value of 1. So the default value is 10. If you set this to 1, you are going to see now the object from a close distance. And if I set this back to 10, so if I click here on enter console command and I click on my arrow up, this will remember my last console command. And if I set this back to 10, you will see that the view is clipped. So near clip plane is very cool. If you've been using Unreal Engine for a while, you may end up with multiple engine versions. And when you install Unreal Engine, by default, if you don't change the packages that will download with the engine, you will have less space. But if you change the packages that you download with the engine, you may have more space. So now in Unreal Engine 5.6, I disabled the target platforms, Android, iOS, and Linux. But in your case, if you don't know about this, these will be enabled. And if you have multiple engine versions, then you will have a lot of space that is taken away from you. Unless you are developing for Android or VR, then yes, you definitely need this. But if you are not developing for mobile or for VR or for Linux, maybe you want to disable some of these settings here on the target platforms. If you also want more space, if you go to your fab library, here you can see a specific number. This number here will be how many assets you've downloaded from the library and from the samples. And you can either change the default location from C to other drive, or you can open the location of the vault cache to delete the assets that you're not using anymore. So if you've never cleaned this up, it might be 100 or 200 gigabytes. So maybe you want to check it out. So if you go to settings, go to download settings, scroll down, you will see under advanced fab library data cache directory. So you can click on reset to delete everything, or you can open this manually and delete the assets that you don't want manually. So I'm going to copy and paste. Here, as you can see, I have car configurator, Cinemotion, content examples, and anything that I'm going to download. So sometimes I click here and I delete things, and sometimes I delete one of them. Now you know. If you want to speed up or slow down the camera speed as you are moving, so now I'm going to right click and move in the viewport. I will scroll up, this will increase the camera speed, and I will scroll down, this will decrease the camera speed. Of course, you can change that from here, but that's the whole purpose of this tip. So you don't change it from here. You can scroll up and scroll down to increase or decrease the speed. If you want to select a translucent object, there is a shortcut to toggle selection of translucency. So now if I click on this glass object, it will select the floor, and the same method, it will select the door if I click on the door. But hey, maybe this is something I don't want. Then if you press T on your keyboard, this will allow us now to select your translucent objects. So if I press T again, I will select the floor. If I press T again, it will select the glass. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did and you want to see part 2, let me know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.